Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi, and over the next couple of minutes, India's agenda at the ASEAN Summit is going to be our key focus, because today we're diving into Prime Minister Narendra Modi's packed agenda for the next few days as he embarks on a diplomatic journey that includes the G20 Summit, a crucial bilateral meeting with the United States President Joe Biden, and of course, ahead of that, the highly anticipated ASEAN Summit in Indonesia. Now, what's India's link with the ASEAN? Let's just take a look at that as well. While India is not a member country of ASEAN, it has ties with the bloc, from being a regional dialogue partner in 1992 to a comprehensive strategic partnership that was unveiled and started by the Prime Minister in 2022, only last year. It was essentially propelled by Prime Minister Modi's Act East policy, which has been the Prime Minister's focus over the last couple of years as well. In 2018, ASEAN leaders were also the chief guests at India's Republic Day parade. India has also signed a free trade agreement with ASEAN in 2010, something that is being looked at a revision when it comes to the Prime Minister's trip to Jakarta in Indonesia. Now, notably, India also had individual ties with these member countries, which has made India a strong player amid these Southeast Asian nations. Now, Prime Minister Modi is attending the ASEAN Summit in Jakarta on the invitation of Indonesian President Joko Widodo. The Southeast Asian bloc has 10 member countries. This year's meeting is going to focus primarily on China's growing presence in the region and the Myanmar crisis after the coup. But why is this grouping important, and what is India essentially going to bring to the table? So let's unravel India's deepening connections with ASEAN, from its humble beginnings as a regional dialogue partner in 1992 to the recent comprehensive strategic partnership, all driven by Prime Minister Modi's Act East policy. Stay tuned, get down in the comment sections as we explore with the right kind of panelists and experts with us on the broadcast, foreign affairs expert, and of course a former diplomat with us on the broadcast as well. Stay tuned as we explore the significance of India's role in this influential summit, where discussions will revolve around China's regional influence and the ongoing Myanmar crisis. Well, if you want to sound like an ASEAN expert, we've got you covered. We have the right kind of panelists with us on the show. Let me just introduce you to them. Ambassador Deepak Vohra, former Indian diplomat, with us on the show. He's been coming to shows on News9 for the longest time. Good afternoon to you, sir. And also with us is Rabinder Sachdev, foreign affairs expert. Very warm welcome to you, sir, as well. Let's get the ball rolling. Rabinder Sachdev, I'm going to first come to you, sir. How are you looking at the key objectives and the priorities of India? Because ASEAN has its own priorities. They're going to be talking about Myanmar. They're going to be talking about China's growing presence in the South China Sea is going to be another hot topic. Our country's key objectives and priorities, what are we essentially putting there on the table? It's going to be a quick in and out, but the Prime Minister is going to make sure that even in that quick in and out, what he wants to do, what he's set out to do, he's going to make sure he achieves that.
Thank you so much, Kabir. A pleasure to be with you and Ambassador Vohra. I think in the big picture, what India looks forward to with ASEAN is, deepening linkages, deeper linkages, essentially, big picture, especially on trade. That is one. ASEAN, if you look, the collective GDP of the ASEAN countries is about the same as the GDP of India. I would think around $3.5 to $3.75 trillion. So that's a big economic, block, so to say. So deeper trade linkages, along with it comes the fact that the deeper we get, engaged with ASEAN, the less ASEAN kind of is dependent, is intertwined with China. So there is definitely a geopolitical perspective to this relationship also, equally along with trade. And the third piece is, I think, overall maritime security and our maritime outreach also with these countries. So I think probably these are 2-3 big items for us. Also, again, with respect to China, ASEAN wants to keep, or supposedly aspires to keep itself as, let's say, neutral or independent as a bloc, under pressure from the US on the one side and under pressure from China on the other side. So our objective would be, I think, the deeper we engage with ASEAN, the more we are able to help it stay, if not independent, but stay, less under pressure from China. So we kind of bolster of ASEAN's neutrality the deeper we get into economic engagements with ASEAN.
Right, and Ambassador Vora, at the same time, echoing from what where Robin they've left us essentially. It seems like this trade deal that we have with ASEAN, that's something that is being looked at for a revision as well. What do you think is going to happen? How will this impact trade ties with the ASEAN nations?
As far as ASEAN is concerned, so I've served in two ASEAN countries. I was in Malaysia in the mid 90s, and prior to that in Vietnam, which initially was an enemy of ASEAN, but then later, along with Cambodia and Laos and Myanmar, became members of ASEAN. As Mr. Sachdeva has pointed out, and as you have said, ASEAN plays a very central role in our Act East policy, as well as in our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. I'm not even going to talk about the civilizational bond that transcends culture, religion, language, ethnicity, and binds India to ASEAN. He's going to Jakarta just for a day, and I'm told that Indonesia is also adjusting the schedule so that the Prime Minister can rush back for the G20 Summit.
Right.
What does one make of this? One, that India's presence adds gravitas to any international or regional forum. Take it or leave it, like it or don't like it. That is the reality today. Second, that the fact that the Prime Minister is rushing there demonstrates India's commitment to its Act East policy. Third, and this is extremely important, I believe, neither the United States nor China is seen as a reliable partner. India is. The India-ASEAN Summit is the first since the relationship was elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2022. These upgraded ties signify much greater cooperation across various sectors, from trade to security, especially maritime security. And the theme for this summit this time, sir, is ASEAN Matters, epicentrum of growth. I was in Malaysia when we were a sectoral partner, and I can assure you that it wasn't easy for us to become a full dialogue partner. There were a lot of pressures on us in the mid 1990s. Our economy wasn't doing well. There was China on the one side. There was lots of things, and it was tough for us to get the invitation. Singapore stood by us, pushed our case. But then slowly, as we grew in strength, our economy grew, our defense power grew, as our international role began to increase, ASEAN realized that they needed India. At one point, you might recall that India was asked to join ASEAN when ASEAN was being formed. We did not. So things have changed. Much water has flowed under the bridge. And that Indonesia, which was the host last year at Bali, has asked us to come. It is very, very significant. So what it says is that as far as Asia is concerned, as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned,
Right.
the Indian Ocean is India as the Pacific, the United States and others will take care of. But India has arrived, and ASEAN recognizes this.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no doubt in the fact that India's rising stature in the global south, in the Pacific South, is something that is making, eyeballs and heads turn everywhere.